Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast. You know me as Sam. Today, I have the honor of a client, but also a great friend who has come into the podcast. She is a true survivor of infidelity. She is a betrayed. Her name is Joanie, and she has given all of us the honor to come in and share some of her story. As those of you that have followed me for quite some time, or maybe if you're new to the podcast, I love to bring in actual survivors, people who are going through it or have been through it and are able to share real, tangible stories. My hope is that every one of you, whether you're betrayed or whether you're unfaithful, whether you're a male or a female, can listen to Joanie's story and really find palatable hope for your story. Her and her husband have an incredible story. They've been through so much. You're only going to hear some of it tonight, but I really thought it was time, Joanie, for you to come in and really use your story for so much good. And you're a wonderful client and a great friend. I think you have so much to give. So, Joanie, thank you so much for coming in.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here. I never thought I'd be able to speak this way about it. I'm really excited, and I know that sounds strange, but I'm excited to share, and I'm honored that you wanted to have me on.
Well, and you just said something great, right? It only took 30 seconds, but you never thought you would be speaking about this. There's so many people, male and female, that are sitting back going, I don't know that I'll ever be able to share this. I don't even know if my marriage is going to make it. I don't know if I'm going to make it, right? So we're already off to a great start. So how long ago was D-Day for you?
Roughly 3 years ago, I had a trickle truth, a couple of D-days, each probably worse than the next. I'm about 3.5 years out.
Great. And so for the audience, there's so many details, but why don't you share a bit of the Cliff Notes version of what you discovered 3 years ago and a little bit about what you've had to walk through?
Sure. It starts in typical dramatic fashion when you're on vacation in Sweden and your husband falls asleep and you see his phone and he's texting another woman. It started there. There was text between mutual friend of ours, actually. She wasn't a great friend, but someone we both knew. And I saw that text, which normally that would have been fine with me, which was maybe we'll get to that later about those boundaries and all of that. But texts were deleted. So that became a whole big stink. And I almost flew from the capital to go home. We had a next stop in Helsinki, and then we got home. And then about a month after being home, I got an Instagram message from a stranger asking if I was still married. And that led to reveal number one. There was basically a woman my husband had known. The craziest part was the girl who Instagram messaged me was not the affair partner. It was her cousin who thought it was very strange that her cousin had been chatting with this man only through Snapchat. So there was the first reveal. I mean, it was as you would expect, very, very fraught, very dramatic. So a week or so after that admission of I've been sleeping with this girl on and off for a month or two came like the big one, which I don't know if it was God or just intuition. I said, re-download your Snapchat, or just my own vanity. I wanted to know what she looked like. I couldn't find her online. And that's then when there was the way the app works, there was like a favorited chat or like a number one chat. And I was like, why is this person on here? And that was when I got a hands thrown up in the air. This has been going on a year. This is the big one. This is the actual thing. This is the big problem. Sprinkled in there for some fun was also an admission of pretty extreme porn addiction. And then to add insult to injury, because I think it's somewhat important, my mom died very unexpectedly 2 months after the last big reveal.
So, like many can relate, it was just an avalanche of trauma being dumped upon you.
Yes, yeah. Whenever it rains, it pours. I mean, and it was raining poop. It was an excrement rain. It was what felt like just impossible.
Yeah. I think you can relate to the fact that it probably took a while for all of it to set in and the devastation to really kind of be digestible, if you will, right?
Yeah. Looking back, I don't even know how you take that in. I guess it's like there's nothing else to do. You have to. And the weight of it was the most oppressive weight I've ever felt in my whole life. To put some perspective on it is, I think losing my marriage and finding that out about my husband was more devastating than losing my mom unexpectedly. At a fairly young age, I was 37, just crushing, absolutely crushing.
Part of your story, and we've talked about this for hours, but part of your story is the real palatable anger and rage that you had finally unleashed. So, talk a little bit about just how much anger and rage you were feeling.
If I can do one thing in this podcast, I'm here to tell you that the rage is real. It is
Yeah.
intense. It is one of the most powerful feelings I've ever felt in my entire life. And also that it gets better. And we'll get to that. But I destroyed my home. I kicked and punched things. I kicked and punched my husband. I spat in his face. I had spent the majority of my life being a very peaceful, in some ways detrimental, go along to get along. In a lot of ways, detrimental, go along to get along person. I mean, very non-confrontational, to becoming just something I never in my wildest dreams ever thought I would become. I grew up with a rageful mom. And so it was then compounded in that I felt like I had become her. And then also she was dead. It was just the mental load there and processing all that. It's just, I couldn't do it. I struggled and then turned to calm that rage, which really is not rage calming at all, which I would drink. And so I would grab for a glass of something and then drink pretty much all night, just raging at my husband. And it was like nothing I've ever experienced before. And just like when they say seeing red, I thought I knew what that was. And
Right.
boy, did I have no idea. It was just another level. It's really hard to kind of describe. I think anybody who's going through it, I hope this resonates with you. I think you'll know what I mean. But it was very intense and nearly all the time. It was
Yeah.
pretty rare that I had a moment of peace from it.
And we know, I say this to clients all the time. I know I said it to you a few times, but all rage is duct taped to grief. And in the 7 stages of grief, which is a model that a lot of clinicians have started using over the past couple of years, everybody knows about the 5 stages of grief, but then there's the 7 stages of grief, which is really beautifully written. But in the 7 stages of grief, there's this one stage called the upward turn. It's where we actually start to be okay with the grief. We actually start to gain some ground. What did it look like when you started to make the turn and you started to slowly get your life back, your brain back, and even your body back?
A big thing for me was getting specialized help. I think my husband and I spent the first 3 year and a half just trying different therapists and therapies, and some were very helpful and they weren't all bad, but I felt insane. I felt like nobody understood what I was going through. And I described how intense this rage and anger was until I met you and you explained a big turning point. And you were very clever in when you decided to unleash this information on me, because it did have to be done at the right time, or else I'd be like, no, Sam, that's not me. To understand literally what was happening in my brain, just the constant fight or flight, the constant vigilance, the constant rumination. So a big turning point was learning what it was, why it was, how to mitigate it. And honestly, like, again, the cleverness in when you decided to give me more of this information and start doing somatic work, which I had to want to do it. And that wasn't to say I didn't want to get help prior. I did. And I was desperately trying to find something. But I kind of feel like I turned a corner when I got sick of myself.
Mm.
And this realization of, it's something we talk a lot about, that I didn't need to forgive tomorrow for all to set the rage aside. That it didn't need to be like, okay, all is forgotten and you're forgiven now and we can move on with our lives because I'm no longer screaming in your face. That there was other ways. I think I got the point across, you know?
Yeah. And I think so many betrayeds can relate to, you had said, I felt insane. So many betrayeds have told me over the last 20 years that they realized they were becoming someone that they didn't want to become. And that's what trauma does. Trauma comes from the past into the present and contaminates the present, but it also alters the neural pathways of our brain. And you feeling like you were becoming someone you didn't want to become, but then realizing that you had a choice to stay or you had a choice to go. And that is what we call the dignity of choice. What ultimately made you be willing to give your husband another chance?
This reason's it's shifted. I used to kind of view my initial reasons for staying as like lesser or less than. And I think that's an unfair judgment of myself. It's not compassionate to me.
We're turning this into a therapy
Yeah,
session on
yeah.
camera. Fantastic.
I initially stayed in part because I was embarrassed. We'd only been married a year and a half. There's some context there. We'd been together quite a long time before we got married. But we'd only been married a year and a half. I was like, holy crap, do I have to give gifts back? What are the rules on this? So there was a lot of, I don't want to admit defeat. I also had a sense of the devil. And a big thing too is I was a woman of a certain age. I felt I can stay and work this out with him in a real way, in a way that actually gives him the opportunity to heal himself. But I wanted children. And I just didn't think I could heal and find someone new and still have time to have a baby. Looking back on it, I had previously always kind of judged those reasons. And now it's that somewhere in my heart of hearts, I still believed in him. There were still, even through all this bad and horrificness, like there still was the person that I loved. And there were so many other ways and things that made us a good couple. I think most people, if they knew we'd been through infidelity, would be really surprised because we do get along and we are great friends and all these kind of check boxes of things that you might want in a relationship. We had them and they weren't fake. Those were real.
Right. As we drop a little bit of a bomb on the audience, in the middle of all this, as you've been healing, you also got pregnant and had a child.
Yes.
So talk about that, because I'm sure a lot of the women or men who are betrayed who are listening probably gasp and was like, oh my gosh, not that having a child is a negative, but oh my gosh, you then decided to have a child with your unfaithful husband, which is a big damn deal.
Yeah, it was a risk for sure. It was a gamble. And I just thought, I'm betting on this horse. And he continued to do work and he continued to try. And I did the same. Like I said, there was some fear of, I felt initially like I was doomed to a half-life, which ultimately is not true. But at the time, I thought I could have a half-life without him, childless, or maybe I'll have this baby. At least I can have that. Even if we don't sort things out, it'll still be some kind of a half-life, but at least it won't be without becoming a mother, which I know now is also not true. I don't have a half-life, but it was pretty wild. It was a wild decision, but ultimately it saved me in a lot of ways. I think it made some of the recovery obviously a lot harder because being pregnant is very challenging and there's more hormones and there's more emotions and there's more stress. But I stopped drinking. I stopped beating my body up quite in the same way that I was. I got more rest. I started becoming pregnant forced me to do a lot of self-care.
Yeah.
Which I hadn't done. And so in some ways, my baby saved me from a not great fate.
Well, there's literally thousands of people out there who they didn't give their spouse another chance just because they wanted to. They had kids or they were pregnant. And I know my kids saved my life. If it wasn't for my kids when my affair came out 20 plus years ago, I don't know that I wouldn't have committed suicide. And I mean that wholeheartedly. I was devastated, crushed, embarrassed, humiliated. My kids have saved my life. And so, in looking at your life now, looking at your child, and looking at your husband, are you proud of yourself for staying? Are you proud when you wake up every day and you live this new life in a new normal, not a pretend normal, but a new normal, which is far different than pretend normal? How do you see yourself? How do you see your little family that is growing every day?
I've always felt and thought happiness, we're sold a little bit of a lie about happiness, that it's a state you will reach. You will reach nirvana in some kind of way, but it's not. It's a series of moments. And the hope is that those series of moments amount to something larger than the opposite. And I would say that's true. We have more good days now than we have bad days, something I never thought possible. That's not to say it's over, and that's not to say we're not still working and we're not going to continue to work. But I love our little family. I love still being able to enjoy a lot of the things that we used to enjoy and then enjoy the new things that we get to enjoy because there are differences now. This is not to say, oh, I'm so glad the affair happened because it gave us this opportunity, but it is the thing that gave us the opportunity. So there has to be some recognition of that it is what brought us here. I am not sure we go to mass every Sunday. That wouldn't have happened, I don't think, prior to. The hope is God would have found my husband in some way eventually, but certainly not within this timeline. And who knows what that would have done to us having a child that could have caused some serious problems down the road. So there's a lot of things that we're more aligned on now, I think, than we had been previously. The good days outweigh the bad days. And most importantly, we have the tools now to deal with the bad days.
You're exactly right. Now, we would be remiss, and because the inside joke is we know your husband, he's a great guy. I would like the audience to know he's a phenomenal dude, and I love him dearly. So, Joni and I are hesitant to give much credit just because it's an inside joke. But maybe for a minute, talk about the work that he's done because he's had to really dig his heels in and do some work. He's had to confront his own darkness, but maybe talk about from your perspective the work that he's had to do.
Yeah, he's done a lot. Through this, we had some childhood sexual trauma in his past, which I think an interesting way to kind of look at the unfaithful is the what, the why, and the how. So the what was the disclosure, which he bungled, but
Yes,
that's
he did.
okay. You know what I
Let
mean?
the audience know he certainly did.
What happened? What is all the truth there? The why. And I heard something interesting that the why is basically everything that precedes you. So when disclosure first happened, I got blamed for everything. I was a horrible monster and this was my fault. And if I were fill in the blank and this wouldn't have happened until we dug down deep into what that actual why was. And that involved some intense therapy on his part and an acknowledgement of this could be forever, that he might be in therapy the rest of his life. And was he willing to do that? Was he willing to continue to try and resolve the issues that are his, not mine, not our marriages? I think so many times we're kind of told, like, as the betrayed, you need to acknowledge your part in this. At some point, our marriage was good. I didn't see any problems that certainly would, not that anything justifies an affair, but I was a willing sexual partner. I wasn't a nag. I'm a cool girl. That kind of, once he calmed his own brain down, figured out what led him to this, like why he did this, which involved his childhood, his trauma, and then how he could do this, which was making me a bad guy, making me into someone that I wasn't, making our marriage into something that it wasn't. As he began to heal, he began to have consistent behavior. And I think for him, feeling what being consistently good felt like, consistently honorable, consistently open and emotionally vulnerable, and that if I were going to stick by him through this, I wasn't going anywhere. And acknowledging the hurts from his youth and from his childhood. And that made it ultimately easier for me to stay and did make me believe in him and did start to see again the man that I know him to be. Because I know him, and I think it's important as well. You feel such a fallout of, did I know you at all?
Right.
How could you do this? Do I know you? Was it all a lie? Who are you? Who are you? I've been sharing a bed with this stranger.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of interesting. I don't know, you think about couples and I'm like, the guy like probably just popped the pimple on my back while he's like texting his side chick. And now this is all so embarrassing. But that's real intimacy.
Right. So When you think about being where you were a few years ago, being in, as we would say, the dark night of your soul, and if you were to share some points of wisdom, if you were to go back in time a few years ago, and if you were to be listening to a podcast like this, what would you need to hear? What would you share with the betrayeds that are out there trying to make sense out of situations that might be worse than yours, might be not as bad as yours? And they, male or female, listening to your story going, yep, I can relate. Yep, check that box, check that box. I mean, what would be some points of encouragement that you could share with the betrayeds that you feel like you needed to hear years ago?
This isn't your fault, and you're not crazy. And you are where you are. What you're feeling is valid. Even if it feels crazy and your brain and your body feels on fire, that's okay. That's okay. And eventually, I would say this, get specific help. I can't stress that enough. And not to say again that I didn't have some very helpful people, but I needed to heal my brain and heal myself before I could dig into how I got into a relationship, because how I got into a relationship where this could have happened.
Yeah.
Because again, the betrayed is not to blame. But if there is something that I've learned about myself from this, was that I let so many things go that I shouldn't have, that just to go along, to get along, to be happy, to not have any conflict or maintain a sense of, oh, I'm not like those other wives. I'm a cool wife. That can wait. There's a time and a place for your past trauma, for deal with the affair, deal with the big elephant in the room, that deal with the task at hand, find out what's going on with you literally in your brain, which is on fire. And that I know everyone says it, and I probably rolled my eyes listening to podcasts before when people would say, it gets better, I promise. But it does. Time helps, but it isn't the salve for all wounds. I mean, I think there's still some betrayeds out there that are still just as mad about it. You have to find specialist help. A big thing that I didn't have that I wish I had was find that one friend who you can just kind of unload on, friend, sibling, whoever that person is for you, that you can kind of call in the middle of the night and say, listen to what this dumb a-hole said. I didn't have that. To add on to the tragic story, the person who I thought was to be that for me, my best friend, she is no longer my best friend. She ended up flaming out. And I don't know if it was the affair. She also started dating a creep. So that didn't help. The point is, I didn't have that go-to to help with that rumination phase, because there is a phase of it's all you can think about and it's all you want to talk about. And you want the commiseration of someone to just be like, yeah, that's dumb, or the affair partner's ugly, or whatever that thing is to kind of help you through that.
It really is key. You have to have safe people that are not going to necessarily try and give you advice because they don't know what it's like to be where you're at, but you need safe people that can support you and that can be a safe place to vent and bitch and moan and yell and
Mhm.
scream and just have somebody be safe. The goal would be for the unfaithful to also be able to show up for your raging and venting and just grief, because that's what you were feeling, was just raw, palatable grief.
Yeah, it truly, it's a death. It is a death. Not just your marriage, in a lot of ways, just like your life as you know it. And maybe most importantly, the life as you planned it. It's grieving what was, it's grieving that no memory feels safe. It's grieving then any thought or view or way that you thought your life might look like, it is now gone. And I felt so alone and isolated. I thought I was damaged forever. I thought this had irreparably damaged me for the rest of my life, and I was never going to be the same, and not in a good way. I thought this had turned me into a villain.
You're so right. I think it turns us into people that we really didn't ever want to become, because the trauma is so overwhelming and so engulfing that you just can't see a way out. And there's a meme that I love, it resurfaces all the time, and it talks about people who healers are ones that come out of the darkness with a flame showing other people the way out or something like that. And I think that tonight has been a wonderful picture of you sharing how you came out of the darkness that really could have just swallowed you. And it would take 5 podcasts to talk about the anger, the grief, the pain, the meltdowns, the hopelessness, the despair. And here you are helping others to know that there is hope. It does get better. There is a way out. And your situation was such an incredibly painful journey. But hearing you say, I love my little family, is a joy to me to have seen all the work that you guys have both put in and the continual hour upon hour of just processing, and nobody could do it for you. You had to want to live again. You had to choose to make your own upward turn. And for those of you that are watching and listening, on behalf of Joanie and myself, and even Joanie's husband and their small little child, we want you to come away with hope tonight. Hope is not a strategy, but hope still is something that can get you up every day and out of bed and cause you to live again and cause you to pursue life again. Nobody will do it for us. But while we may be powerless over what our spouse or partner does, we're not powerless over what we do. So if I can help in any way, you can always reach out to me at samshealingpodcast@gmail.com. I'd love for you to leave a comment and certainly subscribe to the podcast. Joanie, I thought you did wonderful. Anytime somebody does wonderful, they need to come back in again. So call your agent. I'll talk to him about having you come back in again. And thank you for sharing your story. But most of all, thank you for sharing your heart in an unfiltered way that I know that so many can relate to.
Thank you for having me.
We'll see you next time on the podcast.